Hello, today I'm talking with Domenic Genua from the Boating Industry Association, which is the voice of recreational boating in Australia and promotes the positive and rewarding lifestyle that everybody can get from being out on the water. So Domenic, first of all, can you tell me a bit about your role within the BIA?
Yeah, thanks, Mark, and thanks for having me. My role is to look after the marketing, consumer conversation, the communications, and obviously the events, which play such a big part of our shows. So the way our association is structured, it's in 4 pillars. One looks after finance, one looks after policy, one looks after a membership, and I have the fun side of it where I could talk about boating and all the good sides, all the good bits with recreational boating.
And the BIA really does just look at the positive aspects of what it is to be out on the water. And that seems to be what drives the whole association. Would that be correct?
Absolutely, yes. We have a very firm belief that recreational boating is a wonderful lifestyle. There's an opportunity for all Australians to participate. At the moment, 1 in 20, 1 out of 5 people, I should say, have access to a boat and do go boating. 20% of our population is where I was going to with that. So it's a very, very large number. But what it also tells us is there's a great opportunity, given our 17,000 kilometre coastline, given the marvellous estuaries, given the marvellous rivers, the marvellous bays that we have, the marvellous coastline, that more people could go recreational boating. So our message is one of health. Boating is good for you. It's another opportunity for you to get together with your family, and certainly it's a way of life that is accessible to everybody, be it power, paddle or sail, for you to have a good time, get healthier, get some sun, and enjoy your life a little bit better.
You don't have to sell that message to me, but of course, there you've got all of the people. If you get more people out on the water, this is just going to be hugely beneficial to the industry itself. So having that as your underlying core must really just increase what you're doing for the industry partners that you work with.
Absolutely. Well, I think that the big part of our association, our association is broken up into many, many parts. And the part that's very, very important is ensuring that we allow access to the waterways. So it's easy to entice people into recreational boating, but then they have to have access. So we lobby very hard for more infrastructure, more marinas, more boat ramps, more access to the waterways. Because if we're going to entice people, that's going to make it much easier for them to want to participate and to actually participate. So that's the very first thing. And obviously, as an industry association, very simply said, our job is to help our industry prosper. And that prosperity has to come through growth, has to come through participation of recreational boating. It has to come with increased consumption of products and services. And obviously, if we can engage people to be part of the recreational boating lifestyle, what we have is this fabulous community that come together on our waterways to have a good time, to get healthier and to enjoy what we have, given the beautiful environment that we have on offer.
One of the ways that you've got of promoting this boating lifestyle is the shows, such as the Sydney International Boat Show. And right now, we don't have those gatherings. We don't have any method to hold shows, any kind of mass gathering. So it is a huge change for 2020. What has happened in that respect, and how are you looking forward for shows in the future?
Yeah, it's a challenge for our industry. Our shows started, all of our shows, and we have a portfolio of shows, all started in the 1960s. And over those years, we've educated the public that it's the annual location where people gather to come together as a group in this culture of boating that they all particularly love, to see boats, to buy products, accessories, to improve their lifestyle. Now, what we do is market our shows as the place to be educated and entertained. And we do that very, very, very well. But the reality is that they are all big selling events. And we estimate that anywhere between 25 and 30% of our annual turnover comes from the Sydney International Boat Show. It is such a massive event for our industry because people come with the intention to purchase. The statistic is that 1 in 5 people arrive at the boat show with an intention to buy something. They've arrived, they've done their planning, they're going to buy something at the show. But that opportunity is gone. And there's a whole lot of opportunities that go without having the boat show, because the boat show fulfills a number of objectives. To engage with stakeholders, to educate the youth who are the boaters of tomorrow about the lifestyle, to entice people to upgrade their products and have the latest. Also to share what is very, very important, and that is our safety messages, because we want our boaters to be around for a long time, not a short time. And all those opportunities are lost. But most importantly, it's pretty devastating for our members, and those are the retailers who typically use boat shows as their centerpiece of launches, where they release the new products to the marketplace. They sell a lot of products on site. A ridiculous amount of product is sold on site. In fact, in a good year, we would typically expect that the Sydney International Boat Show, amongst all exhibitors, would sell around $5 million Australian per hour of products during the show. In the month of August, as a result of the show, there's a further $200 million worth of products sold. So a good Sydney International Boat Show injects about $500 million Australian dollars into the boating economy or the recreational boating industry, and that's how important it is. So all of the things that it does aren't lost. They are still needed to be done. So we as an industry association are looking at how do we engage with consumers, how do we engage with public, how do we support our industry, and we're looking at a number of pathways. We already have consumer campaigns, but those will be elevated and substantially increased over the coming months, and it will be a permanent part of our future plans. So what we are doing now is determining that the level of communication we have with consumers outside of boat show has to increase substantially, and will continue to do so forevermore, because we learned that we can't use the boat show as our sole and key part or portion of our annual activities to communicate with consumers. We're certainly looking at digital events, because the digital world is here to stay, and where we would normally speak, Mark, face-to-face over a cup of coffee, today we're meeting electronically by Zoom. That's the new world, and that's how we operate. So the boat show circuits also have to adapt. We have a new world. We have to develop a pathway to that new world, and that pathway will mean that we will deliver boat shows in a new format, and they will be complemented with a portfolio of other activities, consumer campaigns, digital events, satellite events, and a whole process of activities where we give the consumers still the opportunity to engage with our industry, but not only through boat show, with a whole series of other activities. The family needs to stay together. We just have to have more than one house. So it's just not the boat show that's our home. There'll be a whole lot of other homes that they're all going to be invited to.
So straight away, instead of looking at this, oh, we've got a short-term crisis on our hands, it's how can we engage with potential boaters in the long term in new ways, and just look at this as the opportunity to start these processes?
Absolutely. There's no question about the fact that we've had processes in place, but we've identified that we haven't been as active as we should have been in those processes. And here is a great opportunity, given the fact that we don't have opportunities to run boat shows in 2020, but now have that time to develop other initiatives to engage with consumers. And those aren't going to be a particular pathway. There'll be multiple pathways. And the right way to go is typically what the consumer wants to do. So we'll reach out to consumers, invite them to participate, and if they wish to do so, we'll give them something that they'll enjoy, that'll allow them to engage, and certainly allow them to connect. And as part of that process, Mark, what's going to be very, very important is for our industry is to provide our industry members with the opportunity to engage with those members, because the success of our industry is only going to come if we're able to sell products and services, make sure we have a healthy community and population of boaters, make sure that we engage with the entire family and not just the alpha male, who's the typical boat purchaser, to make sure that recreational boating and the activities around it is for all, not just a group or a segment of the population.
This brings me on to, during boat shows, how do you set up, and from a conceptual level, a boat show so that it engages the entire family? Because we fully well know you cannot just engage one member of a family to get them involved in a boating lifestyle. It has to be everybody eyes in to the idea of it. And so how do you do that in boat shows?
But it's very important that we do that. And the reason we say that is that whilst a large portion of boat purchases are done by a male, the reality is that the family decision process in buying that boat is very important. The family has to be all involved. They all approve. They all are engaged in selecting whatever they want to have as part of that asset that they're buying. And therefore, we engage the entire family. So to say to our audience, come along and enjoy a boat show, we'll have tens of thousands of men, and that's not what it's about. We have to have tens of thousands of people, which are family units. So what we do is we deliver the message to our consumers that if you attend a boat show, you're attending with a portfolio of education, a portfolio of entertainment, and when you do come to the boat show, you could spend a good solid day there. And we do that. The average visit time at our boat show in Sydney is 7.5 hours. That's unheard of. You arrive and you stay at a show for 7.5 hours walking around and doing things. And the reason we do that is because we give them things of interest. We have entertainment stages where people sit and listen to talks on fishing or boating or safety or things of interest to them, how to use their electronics. We make sure that we also have people of interest. We've always had this fabulous run over the years of great people that have attended our boat show with a fabulous story to tell. You know, we've had Pete Goss as our guest. We helped Jessica Watson. These are names that a lot of your readers and listeners will know about. We've got pictures of young Jessie Watson telling her story about she had a dream to sail around the world when she was 15 years old. We've had, of late, we've had Michelle Lee. Michelle rowed across the Atlantic in the Talisker Challenge, and Michelle was that was a great story in herself. Michelle arrived in my office one day and said to me, "Domenic, I have a dream." And I said, "What is your dream?" And she said, "I'm going to row across the Atlantic." And I looked at her and I said, "Why are you telling me?" And she said, "I wanted to come to the boat show and tell my story. I've seen all these successful people tell their stories at the boat shows. It's a great forum for telling my story." I said, "Okay, so what's your story?" And she said, "I'm going to row across the Atlantic." I said, "Do you own a boat?" And she said, "No." I said, "Have you ever rowed a boat?" And she said, "No." I said, "You better go away and find a boat, row a boat, and then work it out." And lo and behold, she rowed across the Atlantic, and she did it successfully, and she came back and told her story. So we provide all of these people to provide these messages of entertainment, education, inspiration. But we also have the tangible elements. On our deck, externally, 5 floors up in the sky, we have this marvellous facility with restaurants and entertainment areas, and we build a monster pool, an enormous pool. And what we do is let mums and dads and the kids get into the pool and try a paddle boat, try a paddle board, try a kayak, try a canoe, and let them experience it. Because if they're touching the water, if they're in a boat, if they're saying, "I'm loving this," their mindset can only be possible to want to participate in recreational boating. And for those kiddies, it's so much, much more important, because it's those kiddies who are 7, 8 or 9 years old when they're 20 or 21 or 22 and say, "I'm going to go boating." I remember as a kid, I was boating in the pool at the boat show, and it's always stuck with me, and I've always wanted to own a boat since. And these are all the initiatives that we have to have, which is education and entertainment. There's no question about it. But what it is, it's inspiration and motivation to participate to experience and to enjoy the lifestyle, because once they're hooked for life.
I completely agree. And the biggest barrier to getting involved in a boating lifestyle is getting on or in the water. And if you provide that opportunity at a show, then straight away that barrier is broken down. And with my own family, I take them for a sail, but often it is just so that we can have a picnic out on the beach somewhere. And it's exactly what I did yesterday. So seeing that done in a show environment, and this isn't an exhibition where you can just see products. This is a show where people can get involved, interact. And then if you can keep them entertained for 7 hours, there are theme parks which can't do that.
Yeah.
So
we work very, very hard.
Message.
Yeah, we have to send people on a journey. Once they buy their ticket and they walk in their door, they have to be mesmerised. They have to be mesmerised with colour. They have to be mesmerised with ideas and opportunities and little fantasies about what they could be doing. And then an understanding of how realistic it is to engage and actually be doing it. It's not that hard to get into recreational boating, and how the options are there from people to start boating through to people that are quite experienced boaters, and how you could improve your boating lifestyle. It's all there. They just need to have it presented to them positively, happily, and in a very, very entertaining way.
Fantastic to hear. Boating is at the moment restarting in Australia.
Mm-hmm.
We've got the same situation in the UK where we have recreational boating, but with social distancing measures in place. But you have to liaise, or the BIA has to liaise with government, but then also on a state level, because there are differences between the different states. What process happens there, and how does the BIA represent the industries of boating?
Yeah, it's very, very complicated. We've got one of my colleagues who's on the job full time, and he has been very busy since this all broke out. We don't have a single government we have to deal with. At a federally, we do, but the legislation remains at a state level. So at a state level, we've got different levels of boating that was permitted, different lockdown laws, different rules that applied. And our objective was to ensure that, first and foremost, when this all started, that we had our boating public understand that they needed to stay safe. Health was the paramount important, and that was the number one reason for our messaging. But as we moved forward, what we needed to adapt and also understand what restrictions could be lifted, because the reality is there's no better way to isolate than on a boat. It's a great way to isolate. If you want to be away from crowds, get on a boat. So our communication with state governments went down that path. We were very particular about sharing the health aspects of boating. We were very particular about sharing the reasons why boating was safe, particularly if it was done as a family unit. And that legislation over time slowly broke down, where I could almost say now that we're almost back to normal. Social distancing still applies. The rules have been moved in many states, not all states, to say that you don't have to be 1.5 metres apart where possible. Where it's not possible to stay apart, then it's understandable that you can't be there. At one stage, we had a rule that you could have a boat, you could go boating, but you had to have a minimum of 4 square metres per person. Well, if you have 4 square metres per person, that eliminates 70% of all boating in Australia. So we had to change that. But the process we went by is, one, to not be recalcitrant or aggressive towards government. It was firm and fair to share our views on the benefits of recreational boating, how we could assist them in their pathways to having a healthy community, what we could do to support their processes. But in return, we needed support to allow our industry or our public to go back to boating. The process hasn't been equal throughout the states. So some states have relaxed laws quicker than others. And even in some states, there are still some rules that apply. But broadly speaking, our positive attitude, our good communication, and our relentless communication with decision makers has assisted our boating public and our community to very much get back into the water basically now. So we're in a good place. It was very, very shaky for a while, but we're there now.
And boating during this time, there are of course the physical effects of the COVID-19 crisis and pandemic, but mental health has taken a huge role now, and promoting the message that boating is so good for mental health, and that
Absolutely.
must play such a big role now as Australia in particular comes through this stage of the pandemic and trying to make sure that everybody, their mental well-being is protected as well.
Absolutely. Well, we're starting to work with an author of a fabulous book called Blue Mind, and that theory and study that he's done has shown that boating is good for you. If you're on the water, your mental state improves dramatically over when you're not on the water. And what we are doing is using that education process about what he has learnt in our messaging also to stakeholders, to say that boating is good for you, boating is good for your mind. And if we are going through some fairly dramatic and stressful times, which there are, everyone's under a lot of stress. A lot of people are still very, very much worried about their future, their finances, their families, their homes, their jobs. If you allow people to return to boating, what we are doing is not only contributing to a return of physical health, because being outdoors is good for you, but a return to positive mental health. So we are of the theory that boating is good for you, and it plays a big part of our messaging, not only with consumers, letting them know they should be on the water to feel a little bit better, but also with our politicians to say, keep this in mind, that when you allow us to let our public to continue to go boating, not only is it good for their external health, but it's also good for their internal health.
The situation is rapidly evolving and changing. When do you see a return to boat shows themselves? And do you think the format will remain the same as 2019, or will that evolve as well?
Look, the return to boat shows can only occur when governments allow us to have mass gatherings of people. And until that point in time, we just simply can't have boat shows. So that is going to be one of the key elements that decides when we run boat shows. I cannot see boat shows in the form that we've known them in the past occur in 2020. And if there were to be any events very, very late in 2020, there would be a modification of a boat show, and it certainly wouldn't be disguised as a boat show. It would be a gathering of a boating community, inviting a boating audience to come and gather and meet buyers and sellers together. But that really is dependent on the allowance by governments for us to gather. I think that we may see boat shows in 2021. I'm fairly confident we will. However, what I do believe is that we'll see a new delivery of boat shows. I believe that we will have to be conscious of the fact that health will be top of mind with our consumers. So we will have to implement strategies to allow for social distancing. We will have to increase our aisleways. We will have to have hand sanitizers, temperature checks on arrival, to help them feel more comfortable about participating. But we also have to do that because we have a duty of care to our exhibitors, our staff, the venue staff, to make sure that if we're bringing people together to be part of an event, that we take every possible step to make sure that we do what we can for the health of all and sundry. I think that shows will come back in 2021. I'm very, very confident they will. I think that we will have a phasing in scenario where our initial shows may be a little bit more conservative in their delivery, only because of the social distancing and the health, the protection of human health that we have to put policies in for and processes in for. And I think that we're probably a couple of years away from what we know as to be shows in the past. But even then, when we do come back at 100%, we'll still see some subtle changes. I think that there'll be a much greater digital element to it. I think that there'll be still some social distancing for probably forevermore. I think that we will see still a delivery of education and entertainment, but it won't be as rough and ready, and probably rough and ready is not the right word, but as busy and as it was in the past. It would be much more, not much more, but somewhat more conservative in our execution of the events.
Well, Domenic, it's fantastic to see what the BIA is doing, not just from the point of view of handling this huge transition that everybody has gone through, but looking at the long-term picture, how things are going to be changed forever, really, as to how people interact, and saying, hang on, this isn't just something we have to handle in a crisis level. It's something that we can look at the opportunities and also really promote what boating is and why people should get involved. So I think the whole boating industry has a lot to thank the BIA for. So all the best with implementing all the changes, the liaison that you have to do. And it's an incredibly busy time. So many thanks indeed for your time today.
Thank you, Mark. People have been boating for thousands of years, and they'll be boating for thousands of years to come. It's just our job to make sure that they're doing it in a great way, in a healthy way, and in a safe way.
Couldn't agree more. Great to chat.
Thank you.